Chapter 60. Is it uncomfortable for me to hug you? You're running a fever. After walking for a while, Dustless could not help but ask. Shifeng's entire body was burning, and her red face made her feel like she was on fire. No, no. Shifeng shook her head repeatedly. Her heartbeat sped up when she heard Dustless's words. After thinking about it, Shifeng could only take the initiative to change the topic. Otherwise, it would be too awkward. She said, "Teacher Dustless, what do you plan to do with Lucy and Wendy May?" "Actually, I don't have any ill intentions toward them. I don't intend to use or tame them. To be honest, they're too weak. They're not qualified to be my subordinates." Dustless's words shocked Shifeng. He actually said that the legendary level Pandora was not qualified to be his subordinate. That was too arrogant. However, judging from the strength Dustless had displayed, there was no need for him to take in his subordinates. He represented the strongest. Why would he need subordinates? "Teacher, what's the meaning of holding them captive? Are you planning to hand them over to Sulier for research?" Shifeng asked nervously. She had once been Aoi Django's test subject. She knew better than anyone how it felt to be used as a lab rat. It was a desperate life where one could neither live nor die. Upon hearing that, Dustless stopped in his tracks. He extended his finger and tapped Shifeng's forehead. Then, he touched his cheek and muttered to himself, "Do I look like a scumbag who betrays others? I'm obviously very handsome." Shifeng felt a little embarrassed when she heard Dustless's words. She gritted her teeth and said, "No matter what, Lucy and the others used to be my sisters. I hope they can live peacefully under the sun in the future." "Of course, that's not a problem." Dustless agreed readily. At the same time, he revealed his ultimate goal. "I do want to study legendary level Pandora, but I won't hand them over to Sulier. You should have heard of Scarlett O'Hara, right? About a few years ago, after she fell out with Aoi Django, she became one of my people. Now, she's helping me study the secrets of legendary level Pandora in Alaska. With Lucy and the others ready-made legendary level Pandora, with O'Hara's level, he might succeed in his research in the near future." "Teacher Dustless, are you planning to imitate Aoki Django and use Pandora's power to strengthen yourself and rule over humans?" Shifeng asked as his golden eyes stared into Dustless's eyes. People say that the eyes are the windows to the soul. Once you lie, you will appear unnatural and weak. However, after staring at Dustless for dozens of seconds, his deep black eyes were still calm and indifferent. He didn't show any signs of stage fright and just stared straight at Shifeng. Instead, she was the first to admit defeat. Being hugged by Dustless, Zavon could even feel the warm breath from Dustless's mouth on her face. As a result, her pretty face blushed once again. Ruling the world? What a boring thing to do. After a while, Dustless finally spoke as he stared at the blue sky in the distance. "Actually, it might not be a good thing for a person to stand at the peak of the world. After a long time, it will be lonely. The feeling of being at the top is really boring. You don't even have an opponent. Every day feels like a year. Just thinking about it makes me bored." "I understand." "Sorry, I didn't understand Dustless's ambition." Shifeng lowered her head apologetically. Dustless's disdainful look was definitely not a lie. He was annoyed from the bottom of his heart. In fact, it could be described in one sentence. Being invincible was so lonely. When you stand at the peak alone and all your opponents have been trampled to death, what's the point of walking alone in the clouds? Therefore, all along, Dustless was not interested in ruling the world. It was more interesting to play in the human world. After chatting with Shifeng for a while, the two of them unknowingly walked into an underground laboratory. It was the place where Django Aoi was hiding. They also found the wanderers of Yujin who were about to starve to death. They were very miserable. They were only skin and bones left. Perhaps they would starve to death after waiting for a night. Am I one step too late? In one of Django Aoi's laboratories, Dustless stood in front of two containers. There was still liquid on the ground that had not dried up. Not long ago, the people inside suddenly woke up, broke the containers, and left. Cassandra and Tesla. Dustless muttered the names of the last two legendary Pandora. The people sleeping in these two containers were probably the two of them. He didn't encounter the two women in the previous battle. So, Wuchen thought that they were still in deep sleep. Now, it seemed that they had woken up. Moreover, they had quietly left. It was estimated that the two women had also gone to find Wuchen for revenge. Especially Cassandra. She probably hated Dustless. Kanzuya Aoi had an unusual relationship with her. That guy was crippled by Dustless and became the world's #1 eunuch. He was even sent to a mental hospital. Cassandra must hate Dustless to death. After about half an hour, Dustless, who did not find anything, chose to leave. Before he left, he did not forget to set fire to the underground laboratory. It was too cruel. There were many human experiments, and even newborn babies were used for human experiments by Jengo Aoi. It was said that it was for the sake of mankind. In fact, it was just to create more terrifying weapons. Therefore, when Dustless left, he directly used Great Fire Annihilation to burn everything. It could be considered to have ended Jengo Aoi's evil life. Are Cassandra and Tesla okay? Shifeng looked at Dustless worriedly. His face was haggard and weak. Wendy May and Lucy's soul reserves were at the level of 100,000, while Cassandra and Tesla's soul reserves were at the level of 1,000,000. It was self-evident what this meant. The difference was obvious. Chapter 61. Black Zetsu looked at Madara with a determined face. He hoped that Madara would change his mind and give up Dustless Uchiha. After all, it's about the plan to resurrect Kaguya. Thousands of years of planning, Black Zetsu didn't dare to be careless. As the saying goes, a single mistake can lead to the failure of the entire plan. Even the most careful loophole can lead to the failure of the entire plan, not to mention the replacement of Uchiha Obito with Uchiha Wuchen. The impact is even more fatal. After waiting for thousands of years, the plan will succeed. How can Black Zetsu let Dustless, such a little devil, mess up his plan? Madara-sama, that kid's pursuit of power has reached the point of madness. Once he gathers the 9-tailed beasts, Black Zetsu was silent and just looked at Madara. It's impossible for Madara not to understand such a simple meaning. Manjiki Sharingan is not an ordinary Tomo Sharingan. To a certain extent, it can see the content of the steel of the Uchiha family's Naka shrine. It's inevitable that Dustless will do something crazy. Hearing this, Madara's brows couldn't help but frown. His eyes flashed with hesitation, and he began to hesitate. He's just cultivating a pawn to resurrect himself, not cultivating an enemy who will compete with him for the Jubi. According to what Black Zetsu said, it's not very likely that Dustless will definitely have the idea of the Jubi, and as Black Zetsu said, Manjiki Sharingan can already see the content of the eternal Manjiki Sharingan. If Dustless obtains the eternal Manjiki Sharingan, he can see the content of the Rinnegan. That guy has no direct descendants for the time being. His parents are ordinary 3 Tomo Sharingan, and according to the number of times he uses his eyes are not far from self-sealing. White Zetsu said, according to the form of the eternal Manjiki Sharingan, at least in the future, Dustless can't open the eternal Manjiki Sharingan, let alone the legendary Rinnegan. Humph, that little devil will never be able to open his Rinnegan. Black Zetsu sneered again and again in his heart. The conditions for opening the Rinnegan were extremely harsh. One must be Indra's reincarnator. This alone closed the door to all the Uchiha clansmen, and it also required the body cells of Azura's reincarnation to be fused. And it's not certain when he will be able to awaken the Rinnegan, because Madara is close to dying of old age. Is that so? In other words, Uchiha Dustless is almost blind, and there is no suitable Sharingan to transplant. Uchiha Madara's sunken eyes suddenly swelled, and he looked particularly scary. It's better to bring in Uchiha Obito and Uchiha Dustless, let them work together and monitor each other. White Zetsu looked at Madara's gloomy face and carefully suggested. Let me go. It's good to notice this. Hearing this, Black Zetsu was furious, and his anger burned all his reason. When he was about to scold White Zetsu, Madara agreed with White Zetsu's proposal and felt that the plan was feasible. Madara-sama, this is not good, is it? Black Zetsu's mouth twitched, and he suppressed the anger in his heart. He said to Madara, if you change the plan like this, unexpected things may happen, and it is not impossible for the entire Eye of the Moon plan to collapse. Black Zetsu looked at Madara seriously, and his tone was filled with endless sadness. Don't worry. Madara looked at Black Zetsu in surprise, and doubts emerged in his heart. Usually, Black Zetsu was obedient to his orders. Today, he always blocked Dustless intentionally or unintentionally. However, although he was confused, Madara didn't think much about it, because he always regarded Black Zetsu as the incarnation of his will, and he never suspected that Black Zetsu had other motives. The so-called plan is the prototype of my resurrection. There is a saying that the world is changeable, and the plan can't keep up with the changes. There is no such thing as an airtight plan designed by human beings. Any plan would have a loophole that no one knew about. Moreover, no matter who set it up, there would always be loopholes. This was something that Madara could accept. He was a human, not a god. It was impossible for him to take care of everything. Uchiha Dustless and Uchiha Obito are the ones who perfect the loopholes in his plan. The reason why he chose Dustless and Obito is that they can restrain each other. Even if Dustless really wants to attack the Bijou, Obito will not easily leave it to him. Uchiha Dustless. Just a little bit of gravel, it's hard to compare with me. Madara's dry mouth raised a domineering smile, and his face was full of contempt and disdain. For him who had opened the Rinnegan, not to mention Uchiha Wuchen, who was only a half-baked Mangekyo Sharingan, he hadn't even opened the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and even Hashirama wasn't his opponent. After all, the Rinnegan is above the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. It can create and destroy the world. It is the power of the six paths, and its power is much more powerful than the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Black Zetsu opened his mouth, but he chose to be silent. He was depressed. Dustless was not in his script, and now his plan several years ago is bound to change. He was sure that Obito would not be out of his control. After all, he has been secretly watching Obito for many years, and he knows where his weakness is. As long as he follows the vine to the melon, he can successfully make Obito fall into the darkness. But Dustless is fundamentally different. According to the current evidence, Uchiha Dustless is a self-centered person, and he will not be shaken by anything. Even if his parents are killed in front of him, for Uchiha Dustless, he will not be shaken. It seems that I can only let nature take its course, he sighed silently. Although Black Zetsu is the kind of person who doesn't believe in fate, but in the current situation, he can only watch Madara's practice. As the incarnation of Madara's will, it is impossible for him to disobey Madara. Black Zetsu said that Wuchen was really a headache. However, Madara had already nodded to pull Wuchen into the team, and he was determined. What he had to do was to do everything possible to bring Wuchen in. This made Black Zetsu more uncomfortable than eating 10 pounds of flies. His stomach was churning, and he almost vomited. It was particularly uncomfortable. Chapter 62. Time flew by like a white steed. Unknowingly, a week had passed. Although it was only a week, a lot of things happened. The most sensational thing that happened during this period was the death of the Cloud's Raikage by tens of thousands of Rock's ninjas. The death of a village's Kage caused an unprecedented sensation. It was like a rock falling into the calm water, suddenly causing a huge wave. The third Tsuchikage's son, Kitsuchi, led tens of thousands of Rock's ninjas to kill the Raikage. This news raged around the world like a hurricane, making the Third Shinobi World War even more suspenseful, so all the shinobi villages were waiting for the Cloud's next move. The daimyo of the Land of Thunder also declared war on the Land of Earth and vowed to make the Rock Hidden Village pay the price. However, the Cloud Hidden Village's ninjas were still hiding in the village and completely ignored the daimyo's orders. The war against the Earth Country was inevitable, but the premise was that the new Raikage must be chosen, so in a short time, the Cloud had no military force to attack the Rock Village. Konoha was defeated by the Earth Country, and then the third Raikage was killed by the Rock Village. For a while, the entire shinobi world was in awe of the Rock Village. Some of the smaller countries that were hesitant to join the Rock Village, which made Inoki's life extremely good these days. But that wasn't the case. In the tent, the atmosphere was oppressive and heavy. Inoki was looking at the information in his hand gloomily, and his old face changed dramatically. He was panting, and his face was extremely gloomy, and he was about to go berserk. Tsuchikage-sama, you, the Gobi's Jinchuriki carefully looked at Inoki's face and couldn't help but feel numb. Looking at Inoki's angry face, he knew that the information in his hand must be about the defeat of the Rock Hidden Village, or the defeat treaty that the Cloud Hidden Village ordered the Rock Hidden Village to sign. Otherwise, Inoki wouldn't be so angry. This old man cherished his life very much, otherwise, he wouldn't be alive now. That damn muscular man is really not an ordinary person. Chakra surged, and the information in his hand was shattered into pieces. The muscular man he was talking about was naturally the Cloud's Raikage, facing the attack of tens of thousands of Rock's ninjas. He could last for 3 days and 3 nights. Speaking of this, Inoki took a deep breath. Although the Raikage wasn't that old, he was in his 40s or 50s. What made Inoki speechless the most was that the old guy was not killed, but died of exhaustion. In other words, if he still had physical strength and chakra, he would have been able to fight without any restrictions. Luck. Inoki scolded, and his expression became gloomier. It's good to kill the Raikage, but the loss of the Rock Village was also terrible. More than 2,000 ninjas were killed. Fortunately, the Raikage is dead. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Inoki also calmed down, and then began to smile again. Looking at the map on the table, the small earth-colored flag almost occupied the entire map. Staring at the small red flag that had been swallowed up in front of him, Inoki's mouth raised into a sneer. That was Konoha's ninjas. We must quickly deal with Konoha. Soon, the Cloud's ninjas will attack us. Frowning, Inoki said worriedly, and a hint of viciousness flashed in his eyes. He naturally understood the simple truth that a great man must be ruthless, and a small man must not be a gentleman. If they don't clean up Konoha's ninjas in time, facing the Cloud's attack, the Rock's ninjas might really be destroyed. But after the Sannin came 3 days ago, they have stabilized the situation. We have no advantage at all. The Yambi's Jinchuriki looked at Inoki coldly, and his words were full of sarcasm and dissatisfaction. Everyone knew that he had a bad relationship with Inoki. Old Rashi looked at him coldly. He was against attacking the Raikage from the beginning, because it was useless to be arrogant, and it would bring disaster to the village. Especially since the Cloud Village also has 2 Jinchuriki, and the whole country is full of fighting faction. It's useless for you to say this now. Inoki also stared at Old Purple coldly, with a fierce look on his face, and then rolled his eyes, showing a look of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. Obviously, he was saying that he was the Tsuchikage. If you don't agree, then bite me. You. Seeing Inoki's attitude, Old Purple was furious. His breath was filled with sparks. It was obvious that he was on the verge of turning black. Don't be angry, don't forget that Konoha is still watching us. The Gobi's Jinchuriki smiled bitterly. The relationship between Inoki and Old Rashi was like this. Both of them didn't like each other. Perhaps if he wasn't there, they would have already fought. Old Purple was a straightforward person, and he could not tolerate sand in his eyes. Inoki, on the other hand, liked to play tricks. Naturally, the two of them had different opinions and views. We must get rid of Konoha's ninjas. Old Rashi's eyes were cold, and he was murderous. This was a must. Even if the Sannin and Dustless arrived, Konoha's ninjas wouldn't be able to survive. Although Inoki was as stubborn as Old Rashi, they had the same idea. They must quickly get rid of Konoha, and then return to the rock to prevent the Cloud's revenge. Chapter 63. Leaving behind these cold words, he did not even look at Leech's corpse in the Imperial courtyard. He turned around and left resolutely. Trying to run? Actually, I can't wait for you to run. After all, I left that thing on your body. Wuchen revealed a meaningful smile. After discovering that Imperial Courtyard's heart knot had run away, he was not as upset as he had imagined. Instead, there was a faint smile on his lips, giving people the impression that he had done it on purpose. Dustless didn't stay for long and quickly left as well. There wasn't much value in staying here any longer. In fact, Dustless didn't plan to kill Imperial Knot from the very beginning. After all, it was pointless for her to die here alone, and the Imperial Knot residence wouldn't be destroyed. Therefore, it was better to wait for this woman to return and gather the experts of the Imperial Knot residence. Then, he would appear and destroy the entire Imperial Knot residence in one fell swoop. When Imperial Knot fled, Dustless had already left the spatial coordinates of the Flying Thunder God on his body. There was no need to worry at all. Dustless had finally returned to Nuliang Group's spaceship. Everyone's hearts were finally at ease. This was because Dustless was their hope. Without Dustless, no one would be able to survive in the capital where demons resided. Lord Dustless, after you left, many demons attacked us. Everyone worked together and successfully repelled the enemies. The leader was that guy named Aoxidigarba, Snow Lady reported to Dustless. At a glance, the entire spaceship was filled with wounded bandaged people. Everyone had fought with their lives on the line. That big-eyed monster sure knows how to pick the right time to use this kind of trick when I'm not around. Dustless clenched his fists, then relaxed them. There was no need to mind because all of this would end soon. The feathered fox was about to give birth, and after that Hui was born, everything in this world would come to an end. Boom boom boom, there was a violent explosion in the distance. Boundless black fog gathered in the sky from all directions, as if the world had reached its end. Darkness covered the sky, and it was a scene of doomsday. At this moment, all the demons in the capital looked up at the sky. The surging darkness spread out like dark clouds, covering the entire capital. Moreover, it continued to spread endlessly, as if there was no end to it. Looking at the horizon, everyone felt a chill and pressure. It was as if a demon from hell had awakened. The evil aura was chilling. Did you all feel it? Dustless looked at the dark horizon and guessed something. Soon after, he swept his gaze towards Snow Lady and the others. He could ignore the uncomfortable chill, but Snow Lady and the others couldn't. He could clearly see the cold sweat on their temples, and even their hairs on their bodies. Some demons with weak willpower even knelt on the ground and looked at the sky with reverence. At the same time, all the demons who had heard of Huey's legend raised their arms and cheered. Their earth-shattering cheers resounded through the entire capital. Hormao's face was tense. She was also sweating profusely. She looked at the surging darkness in the horizon as if she was facing a great enemy. Her face was pale as she murmured, "Could it be that the demon called Hui has been revived?" Yes, not only Hui, but his mother, the feathered fox. But this kid is really strange. He was actually born in such a way. Dustless's clear gaze pierced through the endless darkness until it reached the vast starry sky. At the highest point in the sky, he saw a massive black sphere. The feathered fox was standing on that sphere. Buzz 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 buzz, after a long while, the darkness in the sky dissipated. A dazzling golden light descended from the depths of the clouds. Bathed in this light, the feathered fox seemed extremely divine. "Welcome everyone who has come from afar to witness the night of Qingming's birth with me, the feathered fox." The feathered fox's gentle voice traveled down from the sky, spreading to every corner of the capital. Perhaps it was because she had just given birth, but her gentle voice was pleasant and filled with motherly love. "Is she treating us like guests? This female fox really knows how to put on airs. I hope she can still be so calm when the battle starts." Dustless curled his lips. He turned his head and said to Snow Lady, Hormao, and the others, "Go back and prepare." Prepare for what? Snow Lady and Hormao looked at each other. They didn't know what Dustless was talking about. "Your reactions are so slow. Do I need to remind you?" "Of course it's the party after defeating the feathered fox and Hui," Dustless lectured them. "It's too tiring to have servants like you." Hearing this, Snow Lady and Hormao rolled their eyes at Dustless. However, they couldn't hide the joy on their faces. Dustless's confidence was like a shot in the arm. Their restless hearts also calmed down. The evil aura that Hui emitted was too terrifying. It was almost suffocating. Even their souls trembled. None of them had the confidence to face it. They didn't even need Hui. Just his mother, the feathered fox, was enough to sweep through all enemies. Thus, they could only rely on Dustless. The calmer he was, the calmer Hormao and the others felt. They had completely become an existence of faith. Ha 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 ha. Long live Lady Feathered Fox. Long live Lady Feathered Fox, a very excited voice came from the other side. Dustless glanced over and saw that on the attic a few hundred meters away, like Siddhartha was waving his arms excitedly. His whole face was red. He can hear it so clearly from so far away. Just how loud is this old man's voice? Dustless muttered. He then raised his right hand. A high-density energy ball instantly formed at the tip of his thumb. Chapter 64. Ka ka ka. A large number of cracks appeared in the container containing Shataraza. An unknown mysterious liquid flowed out and covered the floor. Dustless could even hear her heartbeat through his observation hockey. She's about to wake up. Seeing this, Scarlett O'Hara was extremely excited. Her face and neck were red. She wanted to prove to Dustless that she was more outstanding than Aoi Django, more outstanding than him. Bang! A few seconds later, the container exploded. Glass shards splattered all over the floor. The clean laboratory was also a mess. However, Dustless and O'Hara were concerned about Shataraza. Everything else was just a small problem. She won't be like the other legendary Pandora, right? For example, her IQ will be lowered. Dustless could not help but ask worriedly. If that was the case, what was the point of becoming a legendary Pandora? Absolutely not. With a straight face, Scarlett O'Hara patted her chest solemnly and promised, I can guarantee this with my life. Is that so? That's for the best. Dustless shut his mouth in satisfaction. When he looked at Shataraza again, she had already opened her eyes. Cough cough cough, Dustless coughed awkwardly. He had just climbed out of the container. At this moment, Shataraza was still naked. He could only put his clothes on Shataraza's body to avoid exposing certain important parts. Dustless? Shataraza's eyes were hesitant as she called out Dustless's name in a daze. She rubbed her head. How long have I been asleep? My head is dizzy and I feel like my body is about to rust. It's been a few months. Your transformation is complete and you just woke up, Dustless answered truthfully. Then, he asked expectantly, can you move? Try attacking me. Scarlett O'Hara also looked at Shataraza with a hopeful expression. She wanted to prove to everyone that the legendary Pandora she had developed was better. Otherwise, she would be letting down Dustless's cells. Okay. Shataraza's cute dimples appeared on her cheeks as she said to Dustless, you have to be more serious. Hearing this, Dustless chuckled. The cells in your body are not only Maria's, but also mine. Do you think I will lose to my own ability? Then you're in for a big surprise. Suddenly, her body flickered and she disappeared without a trace. Dustless could not help but be astonished when he saw this. Of course, he was not astonished by Shataraza's speed. Rather, this ability made him think of a profound movement technique that could never appear on a human's head. This shouldn't be possible, right? Dustless immediately shook his head in denial. If that was really the case, it would be too inconceivable. Bang! Suddenly appearing behind Dustless, Shatalisa threw a punch at him. Dustless did not put up any defenses. Her strength was so great that it shattered his body, and the wind from her punch raised the laboratory to the ground. D***M*, my laboratory. But speaking of which, is there a mistake? How can a casual attack be so powerful? Scarlett O'Hara wailed in shock. Her laboratory was made of special metal. When the legendary Pandora Lucy had once been here to investigate, she had refused to cooperate and tried to escape. However, she had not been able to destroy the laboratory with a single punch. Now, Shataraza had destroyed it so easily. Was this strength heaven-defying? What the hell? Compared to Scarlet O'Hara, Dustless was even more shocked. He carefully sensed the residual energy fluctuations on Shataraza's body and could not help but say in disbelief, "There's no way I'm wrong. That power just now was definitely spiritual pressure. And that movement technique was undoubtedly the Grim Reaper's teleportation steps." At this point, Dustless felt that his brain was not enough. This fellow had only transplanted his cells. Not only had she obtained spiritual pressure, but she had even learned teleportation steps. How could he not be shocked? Although the spiritual pressure contained in Shataraza's body was negligible and was not worth mentioning compared to Dustless's, it was more than enough to instantly kill the so-called legendary Pandora. I don't know either. After I woke up, I inexplicably learned this power. Shataraza tilted her head. She had been in a deep sleep for the past few months. After she woke up, she suddenly controlled this ability. She should have inherited it from Lord Dustless. Scarlet O'Hara rubbed her chin and said. Although it was far-fetched, this was the only possibility. After all, the cells in Shataraza's body had come from Dustless. Perhaps. Dustless nodded gently. In fact, there were many similar examples. For example, Shimura Danzo in Naruto had transplanted Hashirama's cells and learned to use Mokuton. Although he was only a dabbler, he did know some Mokuton. Shataraza was in a similar situation. After transplanting Dustless's cells, she had obtained the spiritual pressure belonging to the Grim Reaper, but the amount was very small. By the way, do you have any other abilities? Dustless blinked and said, for example, this thing. After saying that, Dustless revealed the Uchiha clan's exclusive Sharingan, which shone with a demonic light. Anyone who was stared at by it would feel despair as if they had fallen into hell. No. Shataraza looked at the blood-red gem-like eyes. She had not awakened this ability. That's strange. I can understand you obtaining the Sharingan, but I'm a little confused about the spiritual pressure. Dustless was puzzled, but he could not figure out the reason. He could only sigh inwardly that human genetics were too mysterious. Dustless-sama, since Miss Shataraza has succeeded, do you still want to continue transforming others? Scarlet O'Hara's tone was respectful. Dustless's status in her eyes was as high as a god. Let me think about it. This is troublesome. Dustless was a little troubled. If he continued to implant his cells in others, would other abilities appear? For example, the Uchiha clan's Sharingan, or even Kekkei Genkai like Mokuton? Chapter 65. Have mercy, let's talk things over. The green dragon struggled and begged for mercy. It was all my fault before, let me go. From now on, I will never appear in your... Ah! The green dragon suddenly screamed again. His spirit power was strong enough, but that was in the past. Now, he had suffered a devastating blow. Moreover, Dustless's spirit power was boundless, like a vast ocean, unstoppable. The green dragon realized that he could not hold on any longer and kept vomiting blood. If you knew this would happen, why did you do it in the past? There's no medicine for regret in this world. Dustless looked indifferent as his majestic spirit power continued to invade the green dragon's body. Previously, the green dragon could control his body skillfully. Now, he was suppressed by Dustless in a corner and could not move. Moreover, the range was shrinking rapidly. I'll fight it out with you. The green dragon gritted his teeth, and his tone was filled with madness. Using the last of his spirit power, he responded to Dustless's attack and chose to go all out. However, this would only cause him to die faster. I'm the Ten Tails, and I've been polished by countless worlds. I don't even know how strong my spirit power is, and you want to fight me? Dustless grinned and sneered, looking extremely confident. Looking at it carefully, most of the charred wood had turned emerald, glowing with strong vitality. Only the bottom was still a little black. This was the position that the green dragon currently occupied. There was only a little bit of it left, and it was already a candle in the wind. What could he use to fight Dustless? Therefore, no matter how much he resisted, he could not change anything in the end. It's finally over. After about 10 seconds, Dustless breathed a sigh of relief. Looking around, the charred branch had turned completely green, and other branches and leaves had grown out, growing healthily. However, it was no longer the green dragon who was controlling it, but Dustless. He had become a new center. The green dragon's authority is not bad. Dustless closed his eyes, and his body and mind were completely immersed in the body of the small branch. Caw. Roots grew from the roots of the branches at a speed visible to the naked eye, firmly burrowing into the depths of the soil. Dustless followed suit and began to devour the nutrients of all the plants around him like the green dragon. Let's go somewhere else. The plants here have all been burned or swallowed by the green dragon. Dustless opened his eyes. The battle between the two had already damaged the land. Wait, Dustless's gaze suddenly froze. He suddenly felt a small portion of energy enter his body. His gaze swept towards the small branch, and his pupils violently contracted. The small branch didn't change much. It was still rooted there, but the ground around it was very different. The soil had already turned into sand. Interesting. It seems that my authority has been elevated after I obtained the identity of a green dragon. Dustless's voice carried a rare hint of joy. He seemed to be quite concerned. Green dragons could only target plants. After Dustless became a third-generation green dragon, not only could he target plants, but he could also devour land, other energies, and even life forms. This was a completely different divine tree. Of course, to Dustless, these were not important. The road ahead won't be smooth sailing. To a certain extent, this is considered a second life. Dustless looked at the small branch and pondered. Even though he was destined to be immortal as the 10-tailed beast, everything was uncertain. If he encountered an unprecedented enemy and was killed by some heaven-defying method, the small branch on this planet would live on as the second Dustless. By a stroke of luck, I managed to get a pretty good trump card. Dustless stretched. His body slowly floated up. Looking at the distant horizon, he turned into a ray of light and disappeared. As for the small branch, it changed its location and hid in a secret place deep in the mountains. As Dustless's second clone, this body didn't need to be very powerful. It only needed to survive intact. Are we almost there? A ray of golden light swept across the sky. Dustless stared at the island in the distance and sped up. In this world, most of the dragons had been wiped out by Dustless. Although there were still a few dragons hidden, he had already ordered the dean to recruit them. If he refused, then sorry, he would end up like the other dragons. Currently, there was still the white leviathan and the so-called golden dragon wind-breaking vulture. At the same time, Dustless also descended on Midgard Island. But, something's not right. What's going on? Looking at the ruins in front of him, Dustless was stunned for a moment. After a series of crises were resolved, Midgard Academy had been rebuilt. But, where did the ruins in front of him come from? There was obviously an intense battle. Dustless suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Lord Dustless. A familiar voice suddenly sounded. Dustless looked up and saw a young girl running from afar. It was Elise, whose face was covered in dirt. Moreover, there were many wounds on this child's body. It seemed that she had been in a fierce battle before. Where are the others? Dustless asked with a dark face. He had a bad feeling. The Leviathan of White ambushed us, and many people were captured by him. Elise explained with a sad face. Originally, we tried to rope in the gold dragon according to Lord Dustless's orders, but that guy rejected us. Naturally, a fierce battle broke out between us. So, we decided to work together. With the help of the White Leviathan, we successfully killed that guy, but in the end, for some unknown reason, the White Leviathan betrayed us and ambushed the Dean and the others. Many of the others were captured by him. That bastard must be tired of living. Dustless's murderous intent was awe-inspiring. Traces of shocking cold air overflowed from his body. Although he had nothing to do with the white Leviathan, he felt betrayed at this moment. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 66. This is your choice. Since that's the case, I won't bother you if I'm bored in the future. Since they wanted to explore the mysterious starry sky, Dustless didn't stop them. After all, this was their choice. About 10 days later, Dustless and the others disappeared from this world, becoming the biggest mystery of the century. After all, an unprecedented figure like Dustless and the leader of Bridget's family had disappeared from this world. The impact was definitely huge. It was fine if Dustless disappeared alone, but the disappearance of Violet was definitely unprecedented. After all, Bridget's family was the top family that controlled the world. The sudden disappearance of the family leader caused the world to stop spinning. This matter was also studied by some bored scholars and professors, and they came up with a series of conclusions. The entire human race believed that Dustless had left this world and gone to search for the outer space. After all, Dustless had reached an unimaginable level of advancement. It was absolutely impossible for humans to kill him with their strength. Therefore, some countries embarked on the path of exploring the universe. Humans also headed toward the solar system. The cells left behind by Dustless also played a huge role. Scarlett O'Hara implanted Dustless's cells into a group of humans. Some of them, like Shadalisa, were born with incredible abilities. When encountering the so-called aliens, humans had to retaliate. In order to commemorate Dustless, statues rose from the ground of human civilization. End of chapter. After leaving the world of the Zero-Degree Warrior, Dustless wasn't in a hurry to transmigrate. He stayed in the system world for a few years. After all, he had a wife and children. It wasn't just one or two, but a large group of them. For 1,000 years, Dustless didn't spend time with them. Therefore, he spent a few years staying in the system. Although it was a little boring, it was also quite enjoyable. A normal person's life was to get married, have children, raise the next generation, and enjoy the blessings of the world. In fact, Dustless's life was more or less the same. The only difference was that he would occasionally travel to other worlds. It was a night filled with wind and snow. The cold wind howled as the blizzard mercilessly ravaged the earth. What kind of place is this? Are you kidding me? It's been snowing for an entire day and there are no signs of it stopping. In the wilderness, a skinny figure mumbled to himself. This person was shrouded in a mysterious power. Even the snowstorm would take the initiative to avoid him, as if it was afraid of this short-haired man. Without a doubt, this person was Dustless. Even he himself did not know what kind of world he had come to. Let's find a place to hide from the wind and snow. With his eyes closed, his observation hockey spread out and he didn't expect there to be humans in the wilderness, but he soon detected a human being, and it was a young child. Plop. The little girl walked alone in the snowstorm. Her ruby eyes were filled with uncertainty and confusion. Her clothes were tattered and her feet were exposed. However, the little girl was like a walking corpse. She didn't feel cold at all. Hey, kid! Suddenly, in front of the little girl, a big man appeared. This person was dressed so tightly that his face could not be seen clearly. Only a pair of eyes were jumping with a strange red light. Who are you? The little girl asked doubtfully, looking at the person in front of her. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is, the mysterious figure revealed an evil smile and suddenly opened his mouth, revealing two sharp fangs. I'm hungry. Can you offer your blood to me? After that, the man took off his hat, revealing a distorted and ferocious face. His eyes were also protruding outwards. It felt like they were about to fall off. It was extremely scary. Ah! Don't come over. The little girl was also shocked and panicked. She turned around and ran, but because the snow was too thick, she fell into the snow with a plop. She stared at the strong man who was closing in on her, her eyes full of fear and despair. Hee hee. Kid, your eyes are really interesting. I like the look of despair in humans. Also, your blood must taste good, right? The big man laughed evilly. He even stuck out his tongue. Obviously, this guy was not a normal human. You even attacked a child. Your interests are really unflattering. A cold voice suddenly came. The big man and the little girl were stunned. They looked in the direction of the voice. Dustless walked over slowly with a calm face. The wind and snow took the initiative to avoid him. He put his hands in his pockets and took the initiative to greet them. He was very leisurely, giving people the illusion that he was taking a stroll after dinner. Yo, Dustless walked to the little girl's side and took the initiative to greet her. I beg you, please save me. The frightened little girl subconsciously threw herself into Dustless's arms. Her eyes were filled with tears. Her cold little hands hugged his neck tightly. This was her only life-saving straw. Meddling in other people's business. Let's die together. The big man roared and pounced over in anger. Tens ho. Dustless blinked his eyes gently. Black flames suddenly fell on the man's body and evaporated him instantly. Even his corpse did not fall. The bad guy is gone. What's your name? Dustless rubbed the little girl's head. It was too boring in the mountains. There was no one to talk to. Then, he asked in boredom, also, you don't look like a normal human. Dustless lowered his head and pondered. The little girl in front of him looked like a person. Their experiences were almost the same. Jilan Yuji. Chapter 67. These monsters are so childish. Listening to the cheers of the monsters, Dustless could not bring himself to hate them. Instead, he pitied these pitiful people. Once the golden magic formation surrounding Dustless exploded at the same time, it would destroy the entire sky of the capital, as Dusk had said. The monsters watching the battle below would not be spared either. However, these fools were still cheering for Dusk excitedly. Was there something wrong with their heads? Dustless could not bring himself to hate these pitiful creatures, so he simply chose to watch from the sidelines. From the very beginning, Dusk had planned to purify the world of monsters. Although he was a monster, he was also a onmyoji. It could be said that he was on both sides. Heir and Snow Lady, did the two of you hear me? The two women were stunned. They looked at each other and immediately answered respectfully, Lord Dustless. It's good that you heard me. I'm communicating with the two of you using my mind. Hurry up and get everyone to leave in the spaceship. Dustless's voice entered their minds again. This mad dog has been driven mad. He wants to destroy the entire capital. Fortunately, all the humans in the capital had run away. The remaining ones were mostly monsters, and they were all hardcore followers of the feathered fox. If Zhao was willing to help eliminate them, Wuchen wouldn't stop him. In the end, he didn't have to do it himself. Not long after, Nuliang Creation's spaceship moved at full speed and retreated from the capital. Run? Do you think you can run? Dusk naturally sensed the escaping spaceship of Nuliang Creations, but he did not care. As long as Dustless died here, those people would also die. Buzz buzz buzz, thousands of magic formations approached Dustless at the same time. He seemed to have accepted his fate. He stood motionless in the sky and allowed the magic formations to approach him. In the eyes of the other monsters, this scene was seen as Dustless voluntarily giving up after realizing the strength of the enemy. The monsters on the ground cheered even more excitedly. Explode! At Dusk's command, the shining magic formations in the void all exploded. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom, the void around Dustless exploded. After the magic arrays overlapped, they released a powerful force that tore the sky apart. A boundless sea of fire burned fiercely, and the sky above the entire capital burned. The oxygen in the atmosphere rapidly evaporated. If one breathed air into their lungs, their nostrils would form bubbles. This move of Dusk's was simply too frightening. Even the sky was boiling. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, a large amount of flames descended from the sky like an unstoppable natural disaster. They burned all the buildings below, and the entire capital was set ablaze. Just as Tion had said, after he woke up, this world needed to be rebuilt, and it had to start with the capital. But, why are you doing this? Why won't you let us off? Lord G, we are your loyal servants. The demons below screamed incessantly. The huge capital had been set ablaze, so they naturally could not be spared. I'm sorry for the speed. I'm about to build a new world, and I don't need inferior creatures like you to die for me like my mother did. Dusk's eyes glowed as he looked at the fireballs that kept falling from the void. Actually, he did it on purpose. Although Dustless needed to be eliminated, the other monsters were also a huge problem. Aya. You've really let me watch a good show. Dustless's cold voice suddenly came from all directions. Dusk's expression changed when he heard it. He immediately released his powerful aura, trying to find out where Dustless was. About 10 seconds later, Dusk's cold gaze shot straight to the sea of fire in front of him. The voice came from this sea of fire. With such a scorching flame, even a water-type monster would not be able to survive. He should have been vaporized in an instant. But, why is this happening? Dusk could not help but clench his fist as he looked at the flickering black figure in the sea of fire. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. The attack just now was considered his full strength. If he could not defeat Dustless with his full strength, Dusk had no other plan to deal with Dustless. What's with your shocked expression? You can't be thinking that this kind of small fire can kill me, right? Sorry to disappoint you. These flames at most make me feel that the sky is a little hot. A moment later, Dustless walked out of the sea of fire unscathed. His entire body was intact, except for some sweat on his forehead. As he said before, he only felt that it was a little hot. Who are you? Dusk stared at Dustless without blinking. His confidence had been severely damaged. Looks like you're out of tricks. I wanted you to play with me a little more. Dustless was rather disappointed. If this kid still had a trump card, he would not have wasted his breath. Your performance just now was just a so-so. Now, it's my turn to play with you. The moment his voice fell, Dusk felt a deep sense of unease, but he did not know why. In short, he was very uneasy, and his heart was very restless. Retreat. Without any hesitation, Dusk turned around and ran for his life. He turned into a gust of cold wind and ran for his life. It was not easy for him to revive. Was he going to be killed before he could do anything? Dusk could not accept this. However, escaping in front of Dustless was useless. Dusk's path was quickly blocked. A huge figure blocked his way. Even the sky was crushed, and there was no light. What the hell is this? Dusk looked at the huge figure in front of him and roared in a daze. This was because he felt an extraordinary aura from the huge figure in front of him. It was definitely not something that a human, monster, or onmyoji could possess. Dustless at this moment was a creature in a completely different realm. Chapter 68. Bang. Caw caw caw. A loud noise rippled out as if something had broken. The white Leviathan was overjoyed and said excitedly, I told you, how can a barrier stop me? F***CK. With a sudden change of topic, the white Leviathan's expression turned constipated. Something had indeed exploded, but Dustless's barrier was still there, and it was self-evident what it meant. It's your move that can't hold on anymore, idiot. Dustless pointed at the stable sky. It was motionless, flashing with a blue light, as if it had existed since ancient times and would never be extinguished. Wuchen then said slowly, you don't have to feel inferior. After all, this is an enchantment that can withstand Wang Su's flash. Not to mention you, even if you search the whole world, I reckon no one can break it. The white Leviathan was silent. Now that things had come to this, it had completely admitted defeat. In front of Dustless, not to mention defeating him, even if the White Leviathan wanted to kill him, without Dustless's promise, it was impossible to do so even if the White Leviathan had the means to do so. The gap was too big, at least as big as a few dimensions. Before I die, I want to ask a question. The White Leviathan looked at Dustless without moving. Ask away. Dustless smiled generously. How did you find me? The White Leviathan stared at Dustless. This was what it was most puzzled about. If it came from the land or the sea, it would be understandable if Dustless found it. After all, it was too big of a target. However, what made the White Leviathan unwilling was that it had swum over from the deep sea. The White Leviathan was exhausted, and in the end, it was all for naught. It seems that you won't die in peace if I don't make this clear. Dustless stared at the White Leviathan's longing expression and did not hide it. He said directly, "This has something to do with my new ability." You got a new ability? Not only was the White Leviathan speechless, but Keely and the others who were imprisoned were also speechless. They all rolled their eyes at Dustless. This guy already had enough abilities, and every one of them was abnormally powerful. Now, he had obtained a new ability. His dog's hit luck was too good. I replaced the green dragon and took over his body. The current me can be said to be the third-generation green dragon. Dustless spoke the truth. His calm words brought great shock to everyone. He had never heard of such a thing before. To think that he could forcefully suppress the green dragon and even obtain his authority? This was unheard of. You even obtained his ability? No wonder. The White Leviathan came to a sudden realization. It was probably because of this Dustless that he was able to find him so quickly. Indeed, it's a pretty good ability. Dustless smiled and said with satisfaction, I can control all the plants on Earth. They can be said to be my eyes. Do you know what this means? I know. The White Leviathan nodded solemnly. The richest plants on Earth were gathered near the Amazon basin. These could be said to be Dustless's eyes. How could he not be discovered? The White Leviathan thought that Dustless would not be able to find him even if he searched the entire planet. Do it. After understanding the cause and effect, the grudge in the White Leviathan's heart disappeared. He looked at Dustless with an incomparably magnanimous gaze. Swoosh swoosh swoosh, the energy ball in Dustless's hand spun at high speed. The waves of destruction made one tremble in fear. This time, there was no longer any compassion. Previously, he still had hope and planned to recruit all the dragons. Now, it seemed that it was best to kill them all. Boom boom boom. With a flick of his finger, the energy ball flew out and landed accurately on the White Leviathan's body. With a loud bang, the huge body instantly turned into ashes. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Time flew by like a white steed. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. On a beach near Midgar, the weather was unbelievably hot today. All the students in the academy had come to the beach for a vacation. The coast within a few hundred meters was filled with laughter. In such a huge academy, there was only one male, Dustless. It was simply a male paradise. How does it feel? It's great, isn't it? A group of girls in bikinis swaying in front of your eyes. TSK TSK. The dean of the academy moved closer to Dustless. A wretched laughter came out of her mouth. Her laughter gave one goosebumps. When one looked up, one would drool. She said excitedly, if I were you, I would die of happiness. It's so great. You're going to die soon. I advise you to find a place to lower your body temperature first. Otherwise, you might die suddenly. Dustless ridiculed, feeling unusually speechless. Looking around, the dean's face was flushed. She was panting like a cow. Her nose was bleeding, and her eyes were staring straight. He was really speechless. If it was a handsome guy, it would be fine. After all, there were countless girls who were infatuated with him. However, to be able to reach the level of the school's dean, who was on the verge of death, was simply a weirdo. Speaking of which, how are your preparations going? Dustless changed the topic, fearing that the seriously lesbian dean would bring up the topic of bikinis again. He said in a low voice, I don't have much time to prepare for you. The integration that Dustless was talking about was the unification of this world. It's almost done. 70% of the countries are interested in joining us. The dean said proudly. She had all the Ds in the world under her control. The dragons and other heretical creatures had also been eliminated, and the weapons of the human race could barely keep the Ds in check. Therefore, she was now the dominant force. That's good. I will be leaving soon. Dustless heaved a sigh of relief. He had been delayed for a few days because of the matter regarding the dean. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 69. On the plane to the kingdom of Lusitania, Dustless and the others were sitting comfortably in the first-class cabin, staring at the clouds outside the window. What's wrong? You don't seem to be paying attention, Ulysse, who was sitting beside Dustless, asked worriedly. Nothing, Dustless answered casually, then asked, Claudia has told you about me, right? Ulysse was silent. She knew Dustless was not an ordinary person, but she did not expect his identity to be far more bizarre than she had imagined. Do you still need to say it? Marry a chicken and follow the chicken, marry a dog and follow the dog. Wherever you go, of course I will follow. Ulysse suddenly smiled sweetly. I'll follow you, teacher. Sitting on the other side of Dustless, Kodo Kirin also expressed her stance, and purposely moved closer to Dustless to take advantage of him. You're all willing to part with your loved ones? Dustless rubbed Kodo Kirin's head, and the girl lay on his lap. He continued absent-mindedly, you still have your brother, right? Him? Ulysse suddenly thought of Jobert, then shook her head gently and said, as long as he's happy alone. Are you sure? Dustless asked. I'm a princess, after all. Do I look like a woman who goes back on her words? Ulysse looked at Dustless angrily, then blushed. Besides, we've already done it as husband and wife. What choice do I have other than to follow you? That's true. Dustless smiled, then looked speechlessly at the white-haired girl who was eating snacks in front of him. What's up with this girl? The person in front of him was Alphalia. I've already helped her with the withdrawal procedures at Loaf Black Academy. Alphalia will be with us from now on. Claudia opened her sleepy eyes and smiled at Dustless. Isn't this a great benefit? You've taken in Ulysse, and you even have a maid to warm your bed. TSK, I'm envious of your life. Who would believe that Ulysse would be so considerate? Dustless shook his head. Sure enough, as he had guessed, Ulysse immediately pinched his waist a few times, causing Dustless to grimace in pain. How many women do you have around you? Ulysse grumbled. There were Kirin, Claudia, and Sylvia who was flirting with Dustless. Including herself, there were 4 of them. Dustless didn't answer. If she knew that he had countless female confidants in his system, he wondered what she would think. By the way, what do you think? Dustless looked at Claudia. He looked into the girl's clear eyes and said seriously, Claudia, we'll be leaving soon. As for the Lion Heron Star Martial ceremony, I can only apologize. I don't have time to wait until next year. If it was a few months, Dustless could wait, but if it was next year, then forget it. Heartless man. Claudia pouted and complained, but there wasn't much anger on her face. She rolled her eyes and then smiled charmingly. She leaned over to Dustless and kissed him on the cheek. How about we have a child? Sure. Dustless nodded and agreed very quickly, but his brows unconsciously furrowed. If it's possible, then I'm naturally willing. It's just that I've only had one daughter for countless years. At his level of strength, his body had changed greatly. Dustless was no longer a human. His body was filled with enormous power, and it was quite difficult for him to have children like a normal person. Of course, once a child was born into the world in the future, he or she would surely inherit Wu Chen's world-shocking strength. This was the benefit of the descendant of an expert. They would usually possess extraordinary natural talent, but the conditions for their birth were extremely harsh. The plane flew between the blue sky and white clouds. The weather was warm and gentle, so they smoothly arrived at their destination, the kingdom of Zatannia. When Dustless and the others got off the plane, there was a sea of people. If it weren't for the guards blocking them, the entire plane would have been surrounded. Lady Ulysses. Lord Dustless. You two are really a match made in heaven. The citizens excitedly called out Dustless and Ulysses' names. Because of their victory in the Star Phoenix martial ritual, the two of them were already world famous, especially in the kingdom of Zatannia. Damn it, it must be that bastard royal brother. Ulysses clenched her teeth. Their group had rushed back secretly, and almost no one knew. They had only informed Yobert, and now the whole city was in an uproar. He must have leaked the news. It must have been hard on your royal brother to make such a big commotion. Dustless looked out of the airport. The red carpet seemed to extend endlessly. No matter what, your brother didn't mean any harm. Dustless patted Ulysses' shoulder. He knew that Yobert loved Ulysses very much. The few of them got on the welcoming car. The surrounding crowd immediately took the initiative to open up a path, loudly shouting Ulysses' name. You are really popular. Claudia gazed at the excited crowd outside the car, and the light in her eyes suddenly became hesitant. If it weren't for the corporate consortium, this group of citizens would probably live a happier life. From a certain point of view, the corporate consortium was a parasite that squeezed the entire human race dry. Don't worry, when I leave, I will change this world. Dustless's words made Ulysses beam with joy, but Claudia immediately looked over, because her mother was the top executive of the corporate consortium, Milky Way. Chapter 70. If you want to kill me, then kill me. There's no need for such sarcasm. Human Courtyard's not sized up Dustless in an extremely unfriendly manner. Her eyes were filled with the calmness of someone who had seen through life and death. After living for hundreds of years, she was already prepared to face death calmly. Oh, you're very carefree. Dustless smiled slightly. He could not help but look at her in a different light. Some people, such as himself, cared more about their lives the longer they lived. But I don't think I said I was going to kill you, right? Wu Chen abruptly changed the topic. Upon hearing this, Imperial Courtyard's not immediately cast a startled look. What exactly do you mean? Of course, that's only if you're not the only one. The others in Human Courtyard's family won't be so lucky. Dustless's face was filled with murderous intent. You're going to let me go? Human Courtyard's Not's heartbeat quickened. Her face was filled with suspicion. They were on opposing sides, so they should not rest until one of them was dead. Right now, they should be taking advantage of the opportunity to eliminate Human Courtyard's family. Could it be? Human Courtyard's Not seemed to have thought of a certain possibility. Her face instantly turned red. Don't worry, I have no intention of taking advantage of you, Dustless reminded her loudly. Besides, is there a need to find an old woman who's lived for hundreds of years? You. Crack, 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 crack. Human Courtyard's Not clenched her fists tightly. This bastard's cheap mouth was really asking for a beating. Every time he opened his mouth, it was hurtful. If you have something to say, then say it. I don't want to be in the same space as someone like you. It's uncomfortable. Human Courtyard's Not clenched her teeth, suppressing her anger. Then I'll make it short. Dustless organized his thoughts, then said slowly, although we have different standpoints, there's one thing I agree with. Demons are evil existences. To humans, demons are monsters that devour humans without spitting out their bones. These creatures that live in the darkness cannot see the light of day. Once they're exposed, they'll endanger the order of human society. Upon hearing this, Human Yusin had a strange expression on her face. If these words had come from a human, she would have understood. After all, humans were afraid of monsters. However, Dustless was a serious big monster, and he was currently the most powerful monster in Japan. It was really thought-provoking for him to say such words. Outside the window, the territory of the Imperial Academy was surrounded by verdant hills and limpid waters. Even the air carried the fragrance of nature. After a moment of silence, Dustless said something shocking. Actually, I also think that demons shouldn't exist in this world. Aren't you still alive and kicking? Yuan said coldly, and your subordinates. Now that you've defeated Lord Qingming, all the demons in Japan should be following your lead, right? I'm different from those monsters. Dustless shook his head, then said in a serious tone, that's why, in order to maintain the number of demons, the Imperial Academy's existence is necessary. Yuan was not stupid. Her pretty face froze slightly as she stared at Dustless in disbelief and asked, you're planning to use us to destroy the demons? You can say that. Dustless nodded lightly. The number of demons and onmyoges must be maintained at a certain level. It's best for both sides to maintain a delicate balance where no one can suppress the other. If all of you Yuan are killed, the number of onmyoges will drastically decrease. When that happens, no one will be able to stop the demons. When that happens, it'll definitely be a disaster for human society. The corners of the Imperial Court's mouth twitched. Her face was full of confusion. Frankly speaking, she really couldn't understand Wu Chen's thoughts. What exactly was this guy planning? As a demon, he had to control the number of demons. It's fine if you don't understand. There are some things that you can't get involved in. Dustless turned into a puff of green smoke and left. He went to the other places of the Imperial Academy alone. Generations of families had been attacked by Dustless. The results were self-evident, all of them had died in battle. Only a small number of the Imperial Academy's leaders had survived. To control the number of demons, it was only natural that the number of onmyoges had to be controlled as well. About a day later, Gumi was flying in the airship above Kyoto. You're leaving? After hearing that Dustless was leaving, Ox Spirit and the others were stunned. Gumi had been at its peak after killing Ho. Now that Dustless was suddenly leaving, it was as if Gumi had fallen from the clouds to hell. That's right. I've already dealt with the trivial matters that needed to be dealt with. There's nothing left to linger on. Dustless looked down at Kyoto. After Ho was killed, Kyoto was in ruins. Now, people were busy rebuilding it. Ox Spirit. Dustless suddenly turned his head to look at Ox Spirit and said, from now on, you're the next leader of Gumi. You must be joking. Ox Spirit shook his head like a rattledrum and said stubbornly, I'm already old. I'm not suitable for the position of General of Gumi. The position of General belongs to none other than Lord Dustless. If I say you're suitable, then you're suitable. Dustless reprimanded him with a straight face. Only then did Ox Spirit tactfully shut his mouth. If he continued to quibble, Dustless would flip out. Before I leave, I'll strengthen your lifespan and abilities. The Imperial Academy's heart knot has an unlimited lifespan. I'll have to let you hold on for at least a few thousand years. Dustless muttered to himself. Ox Spirit had mixed feelings when he heard that. He had originally planned to do his best to help Dustless move forward. He didn't expect the day to come so soon. What is Lord Dustless's ambition? Prostitute Mao looked at him with mixed feelings. She didn't feel good about it. Dustless was also a little confused when he heard that. He couldn't give a definite answer to this question because he didn't have an answer himself. Who knows? Maybe I'll stop when I can't walk anymore. After returning to Gumi and resting for a night, the next morning, everyone was surprised to find that Dustless, Nuliang, and Ruotsai had disappeared. Chapter 71. You should keep your promise now, right? An expert like you will definitely keep your word, right? Mordred stared at Dustless with a burning gaze. He looked a little nervous, as if afraid that Dustless would go back on his word. He had already knelt down. If this guy still went back on his word, wouldn't he suffer a huge loss? Dustless's mouth twitched. He didn't know how to reply. At first, he was just mocking Mordred. After all, dragons like Mordred thought highly of themselves. Every time he opened his mouth, he would call himself a great dragon, and every time he closed his mouth, he would call himself the noblest dragon. He was simply a racist. In his eyes, all other races were trash, so he would definitely value his own dignity. But who would have thought, fine, fine. I'll just materialize and let you attack me once. In the end, Dustless compromised. Looking at this guy's pitiful look, he would give him a chance to turn things around. Ha ha ha. Mordred immediately stood up and shouted excitedly, even the gods won't be able to save you this time. I will slap you into pieces. Just wait for your death. This guy is really an idiot. He actually took the initiative to throw away his life. No one else is as stupid as him. Mordred sneered in his heart. He had already labeled Dustless as a dead man. Come on, use your full strength. Dustless hooked his finger. His expression was still as lazy as before. He didn't care at all. Go to hell. Mordred flashed and attacked. This guy was about to die, but he still acted so carelessly. Was he looking down on him? Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Mordred's sharp claws descended from the sky, slapping towards Dustless's head. Kaboom. This time, it clearly hit Dustless's head. After a loud bang, Mordred's frightening forelimbs stopped above Dustless's head. But, this doesn't feel right. How is this possible? The atmosphere was oppressive for a while. Mordred screamed as if she had seen a ghost. Her body suddenly retreated as if she had been frightened. There was no doubt that his forelimbs had landed on Dustless's head, and those cold gleaming claws had also accurately struck Dustless. However, contrary to what he had imagined, Dustless's head was not torn off. Creak. An unforgettable pain shot through his body. Mordred shuddered. He knew something was wrong. He looked down and saw that the sharp claws had been cut in half. Why is this bastard's head so hard? After regaining his senses, Mordred roared in anger. Dustless's head wasn't human at all. It was even harder than a meteorite. Even his claws had been broken. Serves you right. How childish. Do you think you can kill me just because you've removed your elemental transformation? You're too naive. In addition to the elemental transformation, I also have armament hockey. Just now, Dustless used armament hockey to harden his skin, so even if he was hit by a claw, he was fine, and he didn't even feel a little pain. Armament hockey? Why haven't I heard of this defensive magic before? Mordred's face was black as he roared unwillingly. Magic, you idiot. Dustless shook his head. At this time, he was too lazy to explain. He said impatiently, if you don't have a big move, I will kill you now. Of course I have a big move. Mordred completely abandoned the dignity of a strong man. He once again flew in front of Dustless, and his legs gradually bent down again. Damn it, seeing this scene, Dustless's head was full of black lines. Does this bastard want to kneel down and ask him to go easy on him? Put on. Sure enough, just like before, Mordred knelt down shamelessly and said very seriously, I'm kneeling down for you again. Don't use this armament hockey. Are you, an idiot? Dustless looked at Mordred like a fool. Is this guy going to kneel down after seeing him release a move and then ask him not to use it? It's a pity. Dustless's face was indifferent as he refused. There is only one chance for a pie to fall from the sky. Even if you kneel down and kowtow now, it's useless. Buzz. After that, Dustless's hand flashed with a bright light, and the ray of light was aimed at Mordred's body. This attack was extremely hot, especially Mordred, who was locked on. Even if it hadn't hit him, he felt that his body was going to burn. But in his heart, at the moment, it was like falling into an ice cave, full of despair. He kept shouting in his heart, I must not be hit, or it's really over. This blow made Mordred see the Grim Reaper in a trance. Get out of Yak's body yourself, or do you want me to do it myself? The light in Dustless's hands suddenly went out, and he asked faintly. His behavior was very unusual. This is... Mordred was stunned. He was even prepared to die. Who would have thought that this guy would suddenly stop? Oh. Yes. No wonder this guy didn't dare to act rashly. I forgot about this. Suddenly thinking of something, Mordred's mouth made a burst of evil laughter, and he suddenly realized that he also held the strongest trump card. Ha ha ha. You must not dare to do it. Mordred raised his head and puffed out his chest, his dragon eyes staring arrogantly at Dustless, and said leisurely, I am occupying that girl's body. If you kill me, your fall will die too. The person Mordred was talking about was definitely Yak. This was indeed a tricky situation, but, are you still a dragon? How can you be so ignorant? How can you be so ignorant? Dustless looked at Mordred mockingly, then raised a finger. So what if you're hiding in Yak's body? I have 100 ways to turn you into ashes. Chapter 72. Who doesn't know how to brag? Mordred was still in disbelief and mocked. If you could really do it, you would have killed me long ago. It's useless to say more. Dustless sighed. There were some things that could not be explained when encountering such a muscular idiot. Actually, he was just testing the waters. If Mordred's soul had merged with Yak's soul, he would not have dared to make a move. If he killed Mordred, Yak would also die. If the soul was destroyed, even the outer path of reincarnation would not be able to revive. However, it was different now. After testing the waters, Dustless was almost certain that Mordred had only taken over Yak's body. Their souls had not merged. In other words, even if this body was destroyed, as long as Yak's soul was intact, she could still be revived even if she died. After testing the waters, Dustless realized that Yak's moves that belonged to the Holy Dragon royal family did not appear on Mordred's body. This guy had been using the moves of the Pluto dragon since the beginning. Was the Holy Dragon royal family too weak? Obviously not. Dustless concluded that this guy had only taken over Yak's body. If the soul had merged, he should be able to use Yak's moves. Since the soul had not merged, there was no need to hold back. 10,000 mammoth heavens beckoning. Dustless suddenly grabbed Mordred with one hand. This guy's body was suddenly out of control. His expression was extremely terrified. The feeling of losing control of his body and being controlled by the enemy made Mordred extremely uncomfortable. Damn it. Sensing that his body was flying towards Dustless, Mordred was shocked. Is this gravity? I have such a huge body. How can you just grab me like that? Roar. Mordred roared loudly and flapped his wings with all his might. Storms swept out continuously as he tried to break free from the 10,000 mammoth heavens beckoning. However, it was useless. No matter what, his huge body was still quickly approaching Dustless. Even if he used all his strength, he could not pull away from him. I'll fight you to the death. In the end, Mordred gave up struggling. Instead, he turned into a black streak of light and rushed towards Dustless. He knew that he couldn't break free with his strength, so he might as well give it a try. Ao ao ao. Mordred opened her mouth wide and bit towards Dustless. However, the moment the sharp fangs were about to devour Dustless, a smirk appeared on the latter's face, and a force that was completely opposite to gravity erupted. Shinra Tensei. Bang bang bang. A strong repulsive force hit Dustless head-on, and the fangs, which were as thick as an arm, shattered before they could swallow him. Not only were his front teeth broken, but Mordred's huge body was also sent flying by the repulsive force. Boom boom boom. After tumbling a dozen times in the air, Mordred's mountain-like body fell heavily onto the ground. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood in pain, and the thick scales on his body were shattered. Dustless seemed to have done it on purpose. When he landed, his head was facing downwards. He saw stars and almost fainted. You bastard, ah! Mordred was in extreme pain. His eyes were wide open. How dare that bastard Dustless attack him? And how could he be so cruel? This body was almost falling apart. Although Mordred's soul controlled this body, in the end, this body was still Yak's. Dustless's attack almost destroyed this body. Wasn't he afraid of killing Yak? How's this move? You shouldn't be able to move now, right? Dustless walked over as if he was taking a stroll in the park. There was a faint smile on his face. Mordred wanted to stand up and fight, but his body was already falling apart. He had no strength to fight, and could not even stand up. Isn't this child your woman? You want to kill her? Mordred asked with blood in his mouth. She's not dead yet. Wu Chen was quite calm and said indifferently, I'm very confident in my strength. Besides, it's good to teach Aiku a lesson this time, so she won't be caught again. People will only grow if they learn a lesson, even if this lesson is a little painful. If you don't have any last words, I'll send you to your death. Dustless grabbed the body with one hand. At the same time, his eyes turned into Rinnegan. Sure enough, there are two souls. After carefully sensing, Dustless smiled and mocked, you idiot, if you merged with Yak's soul, to be honest. It would be difficult to kill you. Unfortunately, you're busy showing off your strength. TSK, idiot. Get out of here. Dustless suddenly shouted. A black mist was forcefully extracted from Yak's body. This was Mordred's soul. Dustless, you bastard. With his plan ruined, Mordred's demon-like screams could be heard from within the black mist. It was extremely ear-piercing and filled with hatred. Everything was ruined because of this guy. Mordred wanted to swallow Dustless alive. Farewell. Dustless looked at the black mist and blinked his Rinnegan again. Amaterasu. A pitch-black flame appeared out of nowhere. No one could see where it came from, but it seemed to have a soul. It crawled to Mordred's soul and swallowed it on the spot. The area of the black mist shrank rapidly. Ah! Mordred screamed incessantly. After struggling for more than 10 seconds, he was killed by Dustless's overwhelming power. Yak also returned to her human form, but her body was naked. I'd better help this little girl put on her clothes quickly. Otherwise, when she wakes up, she'll definitely push the blame to me. Dustless knew Yak very well. She would definitely do something like this. Chapter 73. Strange. My body hurts. Just when Wuchen found Aiku's clothes and was about to help her put them on, the little girl murmured. She rubbed the corner of her eyes with her white and tender lotus-like arms. After a few breaths, she opened her pair of confused eyes. The first thing she saw was Dustless, who was right in front of her. Ah! The young girl suddenly screamed, as if she had received a great shock. You did this to me? Yak's body curled up. Looking at the clothes in Dustless's hands, she was furious. Yep, that's right. Although she didn't see the whole process, she knew that he took off her clothes. Damn. Good things don't come true, but bad things do. Dustless rubbed his head in confusion. It seemed that the more worried something was, the faster it came. That Mordred took over your body. Now that I killed him, you became like this. As for what I did just now, I was just helping you put on your clothes. Although Yak didn't believe him, Dustless still told her the truth. You really didn't do anything bad? Yak fiercely snatched the clothes from Dustless's hands. What are you talking about? Dustless purposely asked with a wretched expression. Humph. You know it yourself. After putting on the clothes, Yak stood up. In fact, even though her body was taken over, she could still feel the changes in the outside world. Dustless was telling the truth. He really didn't do anything to her. But a woman's mind was often very complicated. This guy. He had such a good opportunity just now, but he didn't do anything to me. Yak glared at Dustless unhappily. She couldn't help but wonder if her charm wasn't enough. Am I not good enough for you? Yak suddenly asked. Why do you say that? Dustless stared at Yak strangely. Then he touched his chin and looked at her seriously. He smiled and said, You're very cute. Of course. Hearing this, Aiko beamed with joy. Her small face was rosy, and there was a hint of pink in her fair complexion. She was very lovable. He's just a little unreasonable. Dustless suddenly added another sentence. Yak's pretty face immediately twitched, and she said very unhappily, No one will treat you as a mute if you speak less. Seriously. I can't even tell the truth. Dustless shrugged. At the same time, he looked at the distant sky and saw several skeletal dragons flying over. He couldn't help but think to himself, it seems that the matter isn't settled yet. Mordred, the main culprit, was already dead. But the appearance of the skeletal dragon, what did this mean? The enemy had not been completely wiped out. The rest should be the Magicite Society, right? I remember his name was Gregory Savonarola. Dustless muttered in his heart. Actually, this fellow had another name. He was Yabang de Palma, Yashur Blake's biological father. Since your son is dead, you as his father should also die. Wouldn't it be great if I let you two go to the underworld to continue your fate? Dustless's eyes emitted a cold light. Just looking at his eyes made him feel as if his eyes were being pricked by needles. It was extremely painful. Hey, hey, hey. Yak, who was standing at the side, was instantly unhappy. Looking at Dustless's absent-minded look, she stomped her feet and said angrily, Are you kidding me? How dare you ignore me? You don't even appreciate such a cute dragon like me. How dare you ignore me? Aiko jumped up and down as if she had been greatly insulted. Wu Chen was speechless upon hearing this. This chick's narcissism was really not a bluff. It was estimated that one could not find a second person like her in the whole world. After this trivial matter is settled, I'll take a good look at you. After saying that, Dustless walked toward the skeletal dragons in the distance. The chaos lasted for about a few hours. After Dustless annihilated the skeletal dragons, a large number of members of an unknown organization appeared. These people launched an attack on the kingdom of Lorea, but it was useless. Dustless single-handedly overthrew them all. After investigation, it was found that these mysterious people were from the Magitech Association. Their boss, Gregory Savonarola, was later killed by Dustless. The palace of Lorea was thus reduced to ruins. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. This country welcomed a new king. In the previous war, the old king was unfortunately killed and did not leave a will in time. According to the method of succession, the first princess, Veronica, should inherit the throne. However, she was not interested in the throne. For someone like her who liked to fight, the battlefield was undoubtedly more suitable. Therefore, she decisively rejected the throne and gave it to Sylvia. The person who ascended the throne today was Princess Sylvia. No, she was now Queen Sylvia. Oh! What a great day! Sylvia is crowned king today. Even the heavens are giving her face. After the original palace was destroyed, they had to find another palace to replace it for the time being. Dustless and the others stood at the highest point of the palace. There were no clouds in the sky today. The breeze was nice, and the sun was not dry. It was a rare sunny day. The coronation of a king had to go through a lot of red tape. After putting on the crown and officially becoming the queen, there was still a grand parade. The process was rather troublesome. Today, the huge capital was packed with people. Everywhere was packed. Everyone wanted to see the new king's face with their own eyes. Seriously. That Sylvia, as always, is delaying things. Is it so hard to see her for the last time? Veronica looked up and her gaze fell on the exit of the new palace. She waited for a long time but did not see Sylvia in person. In about an hour, Dustless and the others would leave. Veronica wanted to see her sister's face when she was crowned king as a memento. Other than that, there was also Lebeka, Yak, and Luca. They had nothing to worry about, and they didn't have any obsessions before leaving. Only Veronica couldn't let go of Sylvia. But what made her anxious was that after waiting for a long time, the parade ceremony hadn't started yet. It's about to start. Dustless's observation hockey was revealed. At the gate of the new palace, there were already many teams, decorated with lanterns and streamers, and all kinds of dragon carriages. Creak. About a few minutes later, the gate of the palace finally opened. The huge capital immediately set off a salute, and Veronica's gaze immediately looked over. But, what's going on? After confirming that they did not see wrongly, several people cried out in surprise, including Dustless, who also frowned. Because the new king was not Sylvia, but someone else. Wani-sama. Just as the few of them were feeling gloomy, a pleasant voice suddenly rang out. Sylvia? Veronica was too familiar with her sister's voice and recognized her at a glance. She didn't give up the position of king, did she? Dustless was secretly surprised. For him, kings and emperors were nothing, but for ordinary people, there was nothing more tempting than this. He was really surprised that Sylvia could give it up. It's boring without you in the new world, I decided to leave with you. The girl said sonorously, her beautiful eyes were like the blue sky, radiating a firm light. The end of this volume. Chapter 74. When Dustless chose to cooperate with him, Madara knew that Dustless was using him. He wanted to use his own hands to gain more power. Madara was very clear about this. Then why did you agree with him? That kind of ambitious brat may bite us in the future. Heiju said in a heavy tone. Obviously, Wu Chen was not on the same side as them. So what? The cooperation itself is using each other. Madara said calmly. His eyes were as calm as stagnant water. If he chooses to cooperate, it means that we have what he needs. On the other hand, I choose to cooperate with him, and he also has what I need. But, White Zetsu's mouth moved as he looked at the expressionless Madara and said, that guy is waiting for Madara-sama to fall. If he wants to rob the Rinnegan of the Bijou and Uzumaki Nagato, we can't resist him at all. Hearing this, Black Zetsu nodded. This was the biggest problem. If Dustless chooses to tear his face after Madara's death, no one can stop him. He won't do that. Uchiha Madara shook his head and said firmly, I have told him everything about the origin of this world. Even if he turns against me in the future, it won't be after my death. I believe that he won't be such a short-sighted person. Madara was calm and powerful. He didn't believe that Dustless would take advantage of him after his death because it was completely unnecessary. And even if Dustless did take advantage of him, he had means to restrain Dustless. After I die, keep my body well. Don't let anyone know about it. If that kid dares to have the idea of the Rinnegan again, use the Edo Tensei to resurrect me. Murderous intent flashed in Madara's eyes as he said in a cold voice, I will teach you too the hand seals of the Edo Tensei. If Dustless thought that he had no means, it would be ridiculous. 5 days later, the sky was cloudless and the sun was shining brightly. Standing at the top of the mountain and overlooking the thousands of villages below, Dustless's handsome face had a faint smile. His body was surrounded by a layer of dreamy rainbow colors. What? This is the chakra of the immortal technique, it's not hard to control. Feeling the natural chakra in his body, Dustless's furrowed brows relaxed. The chakra in his body was only a drop in the ocean, but it was still acceptable. In fact, practicing senjutsu was not that difficult. The key was whether or not one could skillfully control the proportion of chakra. Ninjutsu relied on chakra in the body to activate. Ordinary chakra was obtained by mixing one's own physical energy and spiritual energy. Senjutsu chakra was formed by absorbing natural energy, the energy circulating in the world, and perfectly fusing it. In other words, to maintain the balance of the 3 types of chakra, only 1/3 of each type could be activated. If it was more than 1/3, it would be swallowed by the force of nature. If it was less than 1/3, it would not be able to activate Sage mode. Although Dustless now said that he had refined chakra, it did not mean that he could enter sage mode. Moreover, he had only refined a small amount of chakra, which was equivalent to an intern who had just stepped into the sage mode. However, Dustless had to admit that chakra was indeed much more powerful than ordinary chakra. It was completely calculated in multiples, there was a qualitative gap, and it could give him a strong perception ability. These means are the trump cards to save my life in the future. I must not use them unless I have no other choice. Dustless gritted his teeth and decided in his heart. In this world where life was as cheap as grass, life-saving means were necessary. He was not the reincarnation of Indra. In the future, except for transplanting Rinnegan, he could not open Rinnegan at all. Looking up at the sky, looking at the distant planet countless miles away, he couldn't help but think. Rinnegan can't, but Tensigan can. There are not as harsh conditions as Rinnegan, but the power is no different from Rinnegan. It is also known as the supreme dojutsu that can destroy and create the world. Tensigan is divided into two types. The first is the fusion of a lot of Byakugan, and the second is the evolution of the Otsutsuki clan's Byakugan by snatching the Hyuga clan's Byakugan. However, if Wuchen charged to the moon alone, he would definitely be courting death and giving away his points. The Dejianmu tribe was not something that could be easily razed to the ground. Rinnegan can't, but Tensigan, I am determined to get. Clenching his fist, Dustless said firmly. In this world where bloodlines and eyes are the key, Mangekyo may be barely invincible in the early stage. But after the outbreak of the Fourth Shinobi World War, it is impossible to be invincible in that chaotic period. For some monsters, not to mention Mangekyo, even eternal Mangekyo is useless. It is necessary to get a more high-tech eye to play with. Anyway, the value of the existence of the Otsutsuki clan is to guard the Geto Mazo. Now that the Geto Mazo has been lost, the Otsutsuki clan has lost the need to exist. But before that, looking down, Dustless's cheeks were full of frost, like a frozen corpse, his pupils emitted a gloomy gaze, without any human emotions, looking down at the village below, his body was full of murderous intent. Following Dustless's gaze, the size of the ninja village below was extremely large, even larger than Konoha. The climate was warm and cloudy, and in terms of geographical environment, it was not worse than Konoha. The village that Dustless looked down at was the cloud village of the land of lightning. Before the attack on the moon, let me borrow the Hachibi from your hidden cloud village, whoosh. The sharp sound of breaking the air resounded through the sky, the harsh roar was like a muffled thunder, resounding through the endless void, the golden blazing light directly evaporated the clouds into nothingness. Looking up, a straight beam of light was like a divine rainbow, falling from the sky. Unprecedented oppression and destruction suddenly came. Chapter 75. Boom boom boom. In the blink of an eye, the golden ray of light set off a violent explosion, and a destructive wave of air surged out. The impact was accompanied by the rough golden light, and everything that came into contact with it was turned into nothingness. In the center of the impact, a huge scorched pit could be clearly seen. Someone attacked us. Bastard, where did this thief come from? This is the Cloud Village. The Cloud ninjas who were attacked instantly rushed in the direction of Dustless, and their faces were full of anger. Maybe because of the mountain area, or because of regular exercise, these Cloud ninjas were all strong men with dark skin, and their faces were full of beast-like fierceness. Looking around, a large wave of ninjas came, almost all of them had the same appearance. It's worthy of being the strongest ninja village, just this face is enough to make children stop crying. The scarlet-red 3 Tomo turned, and looking at the black figure rushing from a few hundred meters away, he nodded slightly, and then his eyes suddenly narrowed, and his face was full of contempt. Whoosh! Dustless's body once again emitted a bright golden light, and in the next second, he disappeared. His speed was extremely fast, and it was impossible to catch him with the naked eye. The Cloud ninjas were stunned, and they all shouted in their hearts, this unknown flash bastard in front of them took the wrong script, and speed was their strength. A group of idiots, courting death. When he was about 20 meters away from the Cloud ninjas, the golden light suddenly stopped, and his hands quickly made hand seals, and the speed was so fast that it was dazzling. Fire release, great fire annihilation. A group of flames with a diameter of 20 meters swept across the heavens and the earth, coming straight at them in a majestic manner. The scorching waves of fire burned the heavens and the earth into a deep red color. It was abnormally hot and dry, crushing everything. Damn, is this an S-class fire release? Nonsense. Do you even need to ask? Can an ordinary fire escape technique cover such a large area? Water release ninjas, there are also earth release ninjas to resist. Looking at the endless sea of fire in front of them, the cloud ninjas were cold, and the fear in their eyes was difficult to hide. It was the first time they saw such a large-scale fire release. Water escape, great waterfall technique. Water release, violent water clash. Earth escape, earth wall. Earth escape, earth wall. The ninjas of the Cloud-Hidden Village used all of their magical powers to resist Dustless's fire release and formed a high wall of earth with a length of 20 to 30 meters. You think you can block it just like that? How foolish. Yasakani no Magatama. Boom boom boom, tens of thousands of golden light bullets roared out, directly shattering the high wall formed by the earth escape technique into pieces. The wall collapsed into ruins with a loud bang. The situation was as if it was unstoppable. Swish. Swish. The cloud ninja behind the earthen wall naturally couldn't escape. He didn't even have time to react before he was instantly turned into a sieve. There were finger-sized holes all over his body. Speak, where is Hachibi Killer Bee? Dustless stepped on the neck of a cloud ninja who hadn't died yet. His face was full of murderous intent, and his eyes were like a beast that hadn't eaten for many years. I don't know. Poochie. With one foot, the cloud ninja's head was separated from his body. The scene was like purgatory, with a strong smell of blood and endless oppression. Bastard, you are looking for death. The angry voice suddenly resounded, the powerful roar was like a crazy beast, and the thick and powerful forearm grabbed Dustless. Mere dirt, you want to touch my body, ridiculous. Dustless turned his head, revealing half of his face, and then calmly turned his head. His body didn't move, he simply ignored the strong man who attacked him from behind. You are looking for death. When the furious man saw that Wu Chen was looking down on him, his eyes were instantly filled with bright red. His whole body was covered with dark blue lightning. His whole body was like a flash bathed in thunder and lightning. His body was emitting ear-piercing electric light with crackling sounds. Right-un, Thunder Blade. The strong man raised his right arm and swept it towards Dustless. His strong and powerful wrist could smash a small mountain. It seemed that he wanted to separate Dustless's head. It showed how deep his hatred for Dustless was. Didn't I say? Mere gravel can't touch me. You can't touch me now, and you can't touch me in the future. Dustless's face was indifferent, and he still didn't turn his head. Bullshit. The brawny man roared again and again. His huge sturdy body leaped up and swept toward Wu Chen with great force. His imposing manner was like a rainbow piercing through the sun. Go to hell. The right arm with dark blue lightning directly penetrated Dustless's body. What was intriguing was that Dustless's body only flashed with golden light, and there was no scene of separation of the head as the strong man expected. How is this possible? Looking at the strange scene in front of him, the hostility in the brawny man's eyes disappeared and was replaced by an unprecedented horror. Looking at Dustless, who was penetrated by his arm but was unscathed, his rough face was full of disbelief. This guy. Is it possible that he can ignore ninjutsu? Impossible, a person who can ignore ninjutsu is a god. The strong man instantly threw away the ridiculous idea in his mind, because it was ridiculous. A person who can ignore ninjutsu is definitely not a human. While the brawny man was deep in thought, Dustless suddenly disappeared. Since you don't take the initiative to attack, then it's my turn, goodbye, the future fourth rakeage. When he reappeared, Dustless was already behind the strong man, and countless photons gathered on his leg, and without any pause, he kicked with all his strength. Lightspeed kick. Chakra activation. Almost at the same time as Dustless's words, A also timely defended against Dustless's attack. Chapter 76. This old fellow still hasn't given up. Dustless sneered. In the face of absolute strength, did Matthias think that he had any chance of winning? What a joke. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Matthias' body whizzed out again. His speed was as fast as lightning, and he came and went without a trace. However, this time, he wasn't targeting Dustless, but, what are you trying to do? Sylvia looked at Matthias, who suddenly appeared in front of her. Her heart couldn't help but tremble. Looking at the evil smile in this guy's eyes, she felt even more uneasy. Get out of my way. Stay away from me, especially you. If you dare to take another step forward, I'll kill her. Matthias roared at Dustless. What a headache. Dustless rubbed his head. His eyes were cold. Don't think that you can live like this, useless trash. You'll know how stupid your choice is soon. Dustless directly ignored Matthias' threat. He said in a sinister voice, I changed my mind. I wanted to kill you previously, but now I want you to die without a complete corpse. Then I'll drag your little lover down with me even if I die. Matthias roared ferociously. A terrifying star power erupted from his palm, and he mercilessly choked Sylvia's neck. Once he caught her, she would definitely die. Sylvia also closed her eyes in despair. The distance between her and Matthias was too close. In front of the speed of light, you still want to kill? A calm but very warm voice rang in her ears. Sylvia was slightly stunned. When she opened her eyes again, a ray of light had already rushed out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, that ray of light was simply too fast to be caught by the naked eye. It was so fast that it caught people off guard. Pfft, my hand. Matthias suddenly screamed. His voice was filled with extreme pain. Looking over, his right arm had already been cut off by Dustless before it could get close to Sylvia. You damned bastard. Matthias' eyes were bloodshot. He looked at Dustless with extreme hatred. His eyes were filled with all kinds of complicated emotions. Awe, unwillingness, hatred, madness. In short, they were all contradictory. You can die now. However, Dustless turned a blind eye to it and walked towards Matthias calmly. He had seen this kind of person many times. Matthias, who was severely injured, had limited speed. Soon, he was forced into a corner. Let me go. I'm willing to be your slave in the future. Driven by his strong desire to survive, Matthias gave up his so-called dignity. You want to join me? Dustless sneered and said disdainfully, people like you are born with a rotten life of betrayal. If you become stronger in the future, I'm afraid you will cut me into pieces. So, go to hell. After saying that, Dustless raised his lightsaber and aimed it at Matthias' head. Wait. Just as Dustless's blade was about to chop down, a tender voice suddenly rang out under the night sky. This is, Dustless and Matthias looked over at the same time. A petite voice suddenly floated into their vision. Fan Xinglu. Dustless was surprised. He couldn't figure out what this little brat's motive was. However, he was sure that she was not an enemy. Otherwise, he would have attacked just now. Fan Xinglu, as long as you save me, I will obey all your orders. Don't forget that I am the supervisor of the Star Martial Arts ceremony. I am very useful, Matthias said excitedly as if he had been injected with chicken blood. It was as if he had seen the opportunity to survive. What a shameless thing. Dustless snorted. He was even more disgusted with Matthias. This guy simply had no bottom line. Just now, he said that he was willing to be his slave. In the blink of an eye, he became a fence-sitter when he saw that there was someone who could save him. Fan Xinglu ignored Matthias. She looked at Dustless with a burning gaze and asked, Is the promise from before still valid? Promise? Hearing this, Dustless frowned. He lowered his head and thought for a while. Then, he came to a realization. Fan Xinglu had once wanted his blood. However, Dustless's condition was to exchange Matthias' head for his blood. He thought that this chick had already forgotten about it. He didn't expect her to still be thinking about it. It's still valid. I don't mind. Dustless shrugged casually. Then, he looked at Fan Xinglu meaningfully and said, however, are you sure you want to do that? After drinking my blood, you will be my servant for the rest of your life. You will have to follow me wherever I go. This is equivalent to selling your body. Stinky hooligan. Sylvia and Ulysses snorted at the same time. When the word selling your body was mentioned, everyone would misunderstand. What do you know? Dustless rolled his eyes. At the same time, Fan Xinglu walked over. She looked at Matthias coldly. I want your head. Fan Xinglu announced indifferently. Matthias was stunned. Then, he scolded angrily, Fan Xinglu, you big idiot. Am I not better than? Bam! Sadly, before Matthias could finish his sentence, Fan Xinglu's fist landed on his head. His head exploded like a watermelon. Bright red brain matter splattered all over the ground. How cruel. Looking at the headless corpse of Matthias, Dustless' lips moved. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly felt a pain in his neck. You're really fast. Fan Xinglu glanced helplessly at the petite figure hugging her. She hugged Dustless' neck tightly with both hands. Her two little baby teeth had already pierced into his neck, greedily drinking Dustless' blood. This way, everything will be over. Looking up at the bright blue moon, Dustless was deep in thought. Now that all the trivial matters had been settled, and Claudia had also given up on participating in the Lion Heron Star Martial Arts Festival, there seemed to be nothing worth remembering. Chapter 77. After dealing with Matthias, Dustless and the rest went back. Fan Xinglu, the little loli, was also there. Dustless was also deeply helpless about this. After all, he had promised her at the beginning. Moreover, this little girl took the initiative to follow him. No one forced her. Ayaya. What exactly is this? After returning to the palace, Fan Xinglu looked at herself in the mirror and said to herself foolishly, what kind of eyes are these? They are actually white. So strange. I want the ability of armament hockey. I told you before that drinking my blood will give you a random ability. I don't know what I will get exactly. Wu Chen acted as if it had nothing to do with him, then he looked at Fan Xinglu's eyes and explained, that's the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan. It's very suitable for people who use taijutsu. Byakugan? Fan Xinglu was confused, then looked at Dustless blankly and asked, what kind of eyes are Byakugan? This, actually, is quite suitable for you. Dustless introduced the Byakugan in Naruto in detail. Fan Xinglu listened attentively. After a long time, she sighed and said, I didn't expect there to be such a magical eye that can see the acupuncture points of the body. If it is really as magical as you said, it is indeed suitable for me. As her voice fell, Fan Xinglu rushed over again, hugged Dustless's neck tightly, and opened her mouth again. No way, you want to do it again. Seeing this, Dustless was speechless. Did this girl really think of him as an ability extraction machine? Of course, you have too many secrets. I can't wait to find out. Fan Xinglu's eyes were full of fascination. Dustless was like a big treasure. I'm sorry, it is useless for you to continue sucking blood. Dustless pushed Fan Xinglu's mouth away and explained faintly, Yuli's also sucked my blood several times. In the end, she only got hockey. In other words, no matter how many times you suck blood, you can only get one ability. Although Fan Xinglu was young, her understanding was not bad at all. She couldn't help but be disappointed. Idiot. Dustless gently flicked the little loli's forehead and sternly scolded, it is useless to have too many abilities. You can't use them all. You just need to practice a skill until you reach the level of familiarized proficiency. That's true. Fan Xinglu nodded. Then, she looked at Wu Chen unwillingly. The cooked duck flew away. What a pity. Duck? Hearing this, Wu Chen's face darkened, and then he asked snappily, the duck you're talking about is me, right? Boom, outside the palace, a violent large explosion suddenly transmitted over. Dustless, Fan Xinglu, and the rest all furrowed their brows. From afar, the night sky was filled with all kinds of birds and beasts. There were huge flying dragons, fire birds from myths and legends, and some legendary monsters wreaking havoc. Are you kidding me? We just defeated that Yamada no Orochi, and now there are so many monsters. No matter how well Jobert had recuperated, he was still furious at this moment. His palace had been ruined over and over again. Although this was only a small country, he was still a king. How could he, the king, put his face in front of others? It is probably that beast creation magician, again. Didn't Claudia take care of him? Wu Chen gazed at all kinds of birds and beasts in the sky. There were so many of them that he was dazzled. He couldn't tell exactly how many there were. Leave it to me. Dustless gave Jobert a comforting look. After all, he was his future brother-in-law. If he could take care of him, he would. Dustless walked to the balcony and looked at the countless monsters in the sky. A mocking smile appeared on his face. No matter how many there are, they are all trash. Suddenly, Dustless's hands flickered with extremely bright light. Countless lights flew out from his hands. Yasakani no Magatama. Whiz whiz whiz, thousands of golden light bullets pierced through the void and went straight to the sky. The light and shadow in the sky were spectacular, like a golden rainstorm. Bang bang bang, all kinds of magical beasts flying in the void were unlucky. Their bodies were smashed and their whole bodies collapsed. In just a short time, all kinds of magical beasts flying in the void disappeared. How is this possible? Gustav, who was quietly observing from a distance, was stunned. All kinds of magical beasts that he had created were destroyed in the blink of an eye. What a joke, is the other party a god? Yo, a cold and indifferent voice suddenly sounded by his ear. Gustav was suddenly startled. He turned around and saw that it was surprisingly Dustless. His face twitched wildly. Observation hockey covered the area of tens of kilometers, and Gustav couldn't escape from Dustless's palm. Sir, please spare my life. I was just hired by others. If I knew that the opponent was you, I would never dare to accept this task. Gustav knelt down and admitted his mistake with a pale face. Your attitude is very sincere. Dustless looked at Gustav with satisfaction, and then said faintly, I don't want to talk more nonsense, but I'm going to see the person who hired you. Don't tell me you don't know, it's Nicholas Enfield, right? Yes, that's right. Gustav nodded wildly. Of course, he didn't dare to violate Dustless's meaning. Otherwise, his life would be lost. If he betrayed the employer, he would betray him. Anyway, his life is more important. About 10 minutes later, Gustav took Dustless to a remote suburb. There was a small wooden house hidden in the vast forest. Coincidentally, Dustless not only saw Claudia here, but also her parents. Chapter 78. Yo, the two of you. Dustless smiled brightly and spoke humbly. After all, they were Claudia's parents. I heard that you want to take Claudia away. Claudia's father looked at Dustless with hostility. What if I don't agree? Dustless frowned and said coldly, the two of you seem to have misunderstood. I only asked Claudia to inform you. I didn't ask for your opinion. What benefits can we get? Claudia's mother asked coldly. She only cared about the benefits. Dustless couldn't help but look over. This woman was very beautiful. She also had golden curly hair. Her appearance was somewhat similar to Claudia's. Her temperament was noble and cold. She was like an ice goddess. There was no human emotion in her eyes. This woman was Claudia's mother, Isabella. She was one of the top operatives of the United Enterprise Consortium, Galaxy. Benefits? Hearing this, Wu Chen frowned deeply. He felt a little annoyed and even annoyed with this woman. Claudia is your biological daughter. Do you want benefits from me? Dustless raised his voice and purposely emphasized the word daughter. Mother, Claudia smiled sadly. The way Isabella was looking at her was no different from that of a stranger, cold and detached. Don't talk to me about the ridiculous kinship. The top operatives of the United Enterprise Consortium are all devoid of humanity. The so-called kinship has long disappeared. Isabella's eyes were calm. However, the more she was like this, the more terrifying it was. Claudia was her biological daughter. If she treated her daughters so coldly, what about other people? Just thinking about it sent chills down her spine. Forget it. Since it's like this, I'll take it that you sold Claudia to me. We'll be even in the future. Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense. He said bluntly, in a few days, I will use absolute force to rule this world. Is it really possible to do such a thing? Isabella's emotions fluctuated, and her eyes were filled with greed. It's not suitable to talk about the details here. Let's go somewhere else. Dustless turned around and left. Claudia took the initiative to follow Dustless. As for her parents, they followed behind them. Claudia's beautiful eyes were filled with despair. She was probably the most pitiful person in the world to be used as a bargaining chip by her parents. Claudia, Dustless grabbed Claudia's little hand and gently rubbed it with a sunny smile. At least I'm by your side. That's true. Claudia smiled sweetly and then quietly rested her head on Dustless's shoulder. That's true. Claudia is right. Claudia's father, Nicholas, looked at this scene with a complicated expression. In his impression, his daughter was rarely this happy. Looking at Isabella again, she still had that cold expression on her face. Her eyes were shining brightly. She was probably planning for the future of the Milky Way, and she didn't care much about Claudia's departure. About half an hour later, in the palace of the Kingdom of Lusitania, a lot of important people gathered. Everyone was sitting in a circle, and everyone's eyes were on one person. He was as bright and eye-catching as the stars surrounding the moon. Without a doubt, this person was Dustless. Tomorrow, I will perform a large-scale illusion on this world and erase all financial groups on this planet except for the Milky Way. Facing everyone's gaze, Dustless said in a serious tone. If you can really do this, I'm willing to let you leave with Claudia. You can do whatever you want. Isabella, who was like a robot, had a smile on her face. She didn't know that when she said this, not only Dustless, but everyone was full of disdain. Isabella was indeed an excellent leader, but she was a failure of a mother. At that time, the other financial groups will disappear. Dustless didn't even look at Isabella. The resources of the other financial groups will be divided among us, right? Isabella looked at Dustless expectantly. Her tone was still emotionless. Divided among you? Dustless's face flashed a mocking smile. He sneered and said, You don't seem to understand the meaning of a man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. The resources of the 5 financial groups and your Milky Way financial group almost cover all the resources on this planet. Are you dreaming? You want to go back on your words? Isabella stood up at once and stared at Wu Chen with her eagle-like eyes. Watch your tone. I have never gone back on my words. Of course, I will give you the benefits, but don't even think about the resources of this planet. Dustless snorted in annoyance. If this woman wasn't Claudia's mother, he would have slapped her away. I can give you half of the resources on this planet, and the remaining half. Dustless looked at Jorbert and smiled. It's yours. Jorbert was stunned. He didn't expect Dustless to be so generous. He opened his mouth and said half of the world. Isabella was silent. Looking at Jorbert, the dissatisfaction in her heart disappeared. Although her daughter was married to Dustless, Ulysses also had an affair with Dustless. It was her duty to take care of him. After a few more minutes of discussion, the division of the world was finally stopped. The family of Dustless's woman received great benefits. The next day, Dustless launched an attack on the financial groups. In the face of absolute power, they were as weak as chickens and dogs. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. Other than the Milky Way, the other 5 consortia had all been attacked by the calamitous quake star, and had been razed to the ground. Dustless had also left behind a devil's fruit for Yobert as a precaution, as well as other good stuff. In comparison, this brother-in-law of his was much more generous. As for Isabella, that woman was annoyed just by looking at her. It was already nice of her not to beat her up. As for the devil's fruit, about a week after the financial groups were destroyed, Dustless took Ulysses, Claudia, Sato Kirin, Sylvia, and Fan Xinglu away from this world forever. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.